Hey Fitheads, today we talk with Michael Brandt about ketone IQ, and I learned what hua is.
This was a tough one for me because I'm so anti ketosis. And now I'm pretty much won over.
Done. Love it. I'm won
But
over. I tried it on the episode. Yeah, and the how he talks through like metabolically what it does and how it's crazy that we haven't had access to this until now. And it's going to be the next collagen. What?
yeah, and how, I mean, there were so many cool parts of it, but how I think my favorite part was how cereal is a conspiracy to lower libido. Was that it?
Yeah.
Welcome to Total Fitheads.
Serious fitness for not so serious people.
Hi, Michael. Welcome.
Hi, Allie. Thanks for having me.
Of course, we had to hit record really quickly because I saw you already sipping on something. What's going on there?
Sipping on some ketone IQ.
Interesting. That's what we're here to talk about, right?
It sure is.
So, first question, you're not just shooting it?
Sometimes I shoot it. Sometimes I
Really?
sip it. It's like a fine whiskey. It's almost a shame to just shoot it back. I like to sip on it. Sometimes I'll make a little cocktail out of it. Not really kidding. Like I think ketones are really cool. I think it's good to spend more time in ketosis, more time with elevated ketones. It feels really nice. You got to use something for energy throughout the day. Ketones are, in my opinion, one of the most efficient forms of fuel that exists, period. So yeah, I sip on it through the day. It's an acquired taste. Like if you've tried it, it does taste like something. It tastes like something. It tastes like sake or gin or something.
Really?
It's an acquired taste for sure. It doesn't taste like water. No.
I love acquired tastes.
I'll say this. It tastes like it works.
I'm stoked now. I wasn't sure if I was going to crack this open, but I'm convinced already.
Yeah, let's see your
It
ketone
tastes like it
face.
works.
Try to not spit it out on camera.
I've had the kind that tastes like a tire fire. You know, the stuff that you haven't refined to be tolerable.
Right.
The base of it. I've done that.
Yeah.
That was...
We've been in this space. We launched the first ever ketone drink in 2017. That stuff tasted pretty gnarly, and just the raw stuff, even before we productized it, tastes even worse. Like this tastes, this is the best tasting ketone there ever has been. I will say that.
You heard it here, folks.
There's been worse tasting. Like the raw stuff can be pretty crazy.
Yeah. So what is the demographic that wants to drink that raw stuff? Obviously, I'm in it. Who is that type of person?
Well, there's raw stuff and there's raw stuff. Like what we have here is the only active ingredient in there is a ketone. We've done a good amount of R&D around formulation and making it taste palatable and all that stuff. But I would still consider this pretty darn close to raw. It's just a ketone.
Okay.
The demographic of people drinking it. Look, like the vision on ketones is that you can go to Costco right now and buy collagen. You can buy omega-3s. You can buy CBD at your local grocery store, 7-Eleven. Ketones are a nutritional primitive that should be as widely available as everything I just mentioned. So the Galaxy Brain vision here is that it should just be widely available for everyone. I think right now, snapshot 2022, it's like, top 10% of people who own a Peloton or who are into biohacking or checking their continuous glucose levels. It's like that more dialed in set, but we're in it to win it. And I think that the total market for this is everyone. We're all doing metabolism, right?
Yeah, no, it's true. Okay, wait. I'm going. Sorry to all our audio listeners. Everyone describe in detail what my face looks like. Smooth.
Unchanged.
Yeah, it's you
Was I
must
supposed
have
to react? I'm sorry. It's good.
gotten it.
I'm a fan. I can't describe that flavor though. That is like nothing else I've ever tasted ever.
Yeah, it's got a little bit of a, I don't know. It's like a really kombucha-y flavor or something. Like the first time I had kombucha, it was like, this stuff is weird. You can mix it with stuff. I like to mix it with Olipop. There's like a lemon ginger Olipop. It tastes really good with. You can mix it with your diet soda of choice.
It's almost like a feel, not a taste, too. There's a feel in there.
Oh
like
yeah, yeah, you're astute. It's got a mouthfeel. It's got a little bit of a like ketones. Ketones have some viscosity to them.
Interesting.
Max, I'm sorry we were missing out. Did yours get lost in the mail? What do we do? Do we not send over
You
one
chugged
to both
it.
of you? You chugged it this morning. All right, good.
Well, I think in all fairness, we should back up and explain maybe to our audio listeners what we're drinking, what's going on, maybe a little bit of me and Allie are really excited about this, but like, let's take a step back and like see what's going on. Don't you think, Allie?
100%.
Yeah, I guess I assume that everybody knows what ketones are, but we also have a wider audience than just the biohackers. So give us a rundown. Ketoneiq, what do we got in here?
Yeah, what is this? What the hell is a ketone? Let's start there.
Let's get the keto overview.
Yes. Okay. What is a ketone? That's good.
You're so proud of that one. You should be.
There's my pen. Oh, yeah. I lost it. It's gone. Forget it.
All right. The keto overview here is ketones are an energy substrate. So you can think of them like sugar has energy in it. Ketones have energy in it. That's the most basic way to describe it. Is it's a source of energy. It happens to be very efficient. It happens to feel really nice subjectively for a lot of people. Your body makes ketones. Always has, always will. For 300,000 years, your body has had the ability to make a ketone. The human body has had the ability to make a ketone. Ancient humans had more ketones circulating because your body makes ketones when you're in a low carb state, either by eating low carb or ketogenic diet. There's shades of gray to it. So, eating lower carb, that's one part. Being more active, so burning off excess carbs, that's another part to it. There's also intermittent fasting or starving or just not having access to calories in general. In any of those contexts, your body is going to be low on stored carbohydrate and it's going to start creating its own ketones. So that's why I say ancient humans spent more time with elevated ketones because they're walking around 4, 5, 6 miles a day. There's no Slurpees. There's no Almond Joys on the savannah. So you're not eating that much carbs. You're moving around a lot. You're starving /
the top two. Yeah, of course. The top two things I would be asking about if I was an old.
So specific.
Where's the Almond Joys?
Great improviser.
That's the keto overview of what we call endogenous ketosis, of your body making its own ketones. Your body's always been able to make ketones. Starting about 100 years ago, early 1900s, scientists started explicitly looking at the ketogenic diet and specifically in instances of kids having seizures. And they saw that in this certain population of kids having seizures, when they put them onto a ketogenic diet, had them not eat any carbohydrates to induce those kids to make their own ketones, instances of seizures dropped way, way down. And what that had to do with was that the brain in those patients, their brains were not able to metabolize glucose, but ketones were able to be metabolized. So glucose, your brain's not doing metabolism correctly for those patients. Ketones were able to get metabolized, recover cognitive ability. And that was the first application of ketones in a medical therapeutic setting in the modern world. Over the course of the 20th century, a lot of things were discovered. The Krebs cycle was really discovered. Hey, how does the mitochondria really work? How does the Krebs cycle really work? How does energy get turned into ATP in your cells? At the turn of the 21st century, so around the year 2000, there was a specific program at DARPA and the NIH. So DARPA is the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. They do a lot of the frontier technology in the U.S. Department of Defense. So like they invented the internet, like in the 70s. It's that group. If people have heard of DARPA. DARPA had a program in the early 2000s that was called, wait for it, it was called Operation Metabolic Dominance. And the goal...
I love it.
Yeah. the goal there was to make an exogenous ketone, an outside of your body ketone that you could eat or drink. That, hey, we know that ketones have all these efficient properties to them when your body makes them. Okay, can you make a ketone and drink it? And that's where you had the like extremely acrid tasting, and this was like $20,000 a shot. DARPA and the NIH basically got a proof of concept out in the early 2000s of like the basic exogenous ketone. And it was cool. It was, in some regards, it was a success. It stayed on the shelf. Like it collected dust for many years until in 2016, 2017, my co-founder and I, we launched the world's first ketone drink in 2017. We took that technology, we brought it to the world. We actually re-engaged with the United States Department of Defense, got a $6 million contract with the DoD, working on warfighter performance and all these cognitively, physically demanding missions. And there's a lot more to unpack there, but I'll leave it there. That's the Keto overview of the main highlights.
So, okay. And the reason that they're wanting to, like, these high performing people to have ketones is that it's better than the sugar?
Yes. There's a few different things ketones do better than sugar. They're more efficient. So when you look at the way your metabolism works, you have a substrate that has calories in it. And then that is using some amount of oxygen that you're breathing. And then the substrate plus oxygen turns into ATP, cellular energy. Ketones turn into energy using 30% less oxygen than glucose, carbohydrates. So they're more efficient. They turn into energy, usable energy in your cells more efficiently. They also create less free radicals, less oxidative stress, which is basically, if you think of your metabolism as an engine, like you run it over 100 years, the engine parts kind of wear out, like gunk builds up. That's oxidative stress. So ketones create less oxidative stress. Sugar, elevated blood glucose all the time creates a lot of oxidative stress. And things get really interesting once you start stacking. Like, so when the elite performers we work with, like they'll actually have both. They'll have their goo shot or their carbohydrates, and they'll have ketones. We work a lot with Tour de France teams. They'll have carbohydrates and they'll have ketones at the same time, because then their stance is like they want a dual fuel. They're not trying to like pick one or the other. They're trying to get maximum substrate availability across all channels and pathways so that they can bike up the mountain really hard and do it again the next day. So it depends what you're after. Like there's some people who are doing like hardcore ketogenic diet, low carb, want to be in ketosis all the time. We have other people who are like, I want all forms of fuel in my system at all points. So that's one of the interesting things about it, is it's a substrate. So it's we're all doing metabolism, whether you're 27, you're Tour de France rider, or you're 65 and you're fighting off cognitive decline, or you're trying to lose weight. Like we're all doing metabolism all the time, and you're using something for energy, and ketones can be a tool in the toolkit.
So I was understanding incorrectly that it's either one or the other. I am one of those people that watches my glucose, right? So I was thinking that I wouldn't be using ketones when my glucose is, above the baseline of like 70, whatever.
Your body
80.
will not be making ketones when your glucose is high. But if you drank some ketones, your body would use those.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I also was sort of under the idea that like drinking this now, if I wasn't fasted long enough, it would kind of be useless. But my body will still use the energy even if there is glucose available.
100%. Okay. Ketones pop to the top of the stack. There's no like way for them to go backwards. Like glucose, if you have elevating glucose, your body can like pack the glucose away and store the glucose as fat. When you have ketones around, your body will burn them. Like they pop to the top of the stack there.
Oh, okay, so it'll burn the ketones before.
Yeah, the ketones will be the preferred energy source.
Whoa!
And so and
what?
Then and as a result, they have this glycogen sparing effect where if you're going on a big bike ride, you'll be burning less carbs when you if you also drank ketones, which is good, right? If you're doing an Ironman, like the whole thing is like, you're going to be eating like 30 goo shots over the course of, 8, 10, 12 hours. It's helpful if you can't even eat enough glucose to like power yourself. Like it's going to be really hard to not bonk. Ketones spare the amount of glucose that your body is even burning.
Interesting. Yeah, I've heard if you do the math on an Ironman, you technically can't eat enough on that bike, even if it was a buffet, to like keep you going. Yeah.
That's we can roll out the map a little bit on that. Like what is actually happening if you do a Ironman, where basically your body can't store that much carbohydrate. You can store about 2,000 calories of glycogen in your muscle and your other tissue.
Liver, yeah.
In your liver, yeah, mainly. And so you have 2,000 calories, but you burn through that. You can burn through that in a few hours of heavy exercise, like an Ironman. And then what's your body going to start doing? You have a couple other options, right? You also have fat. The good thing about body fat, even if you're a lean person, like you have 100 times more fat. You can store 2,000 calories of fat versus 200. You can store 200,000 calories of fat versus 2,000 of glycogen, carbohydrates. Your body, once you start running low on glycogen, your body will start burning that fat. The fat is slow, is the thing. It's like that fat will turn into ketones. Some of the fat can be used directly. Some of it will be turned into ketones. It's a very slow process. Glycogen, very fast, awesome. Fat has a lot of storage. That part is awesome, but it's very slow. Like, I don't know if this analogy is going to make sense to people, but it's like RAM versus your hard drive. It's like one is very quick, but small amount. The other is large, but slower. And then the other option is you can be eating new calories. Like as you're biking, okay, I'm slamming goo shots. So that's what they always say on an Ironman or a marathon is eat before you're hungry. Like you want to be eating as much as possible, because as soon as the gun goes off, you're already behind. You're going to be burning calories like 3 times faster than you could possibly eat them. Even if you're eating the whole time, there's just a limit to how much can go through your GI system at a given time. So those are the inputs, is like you have your on deck. That's why you carb load. Maybe I can store 2,500 calories of carbs. Like you try to carb load, like pack in the glycogen. Over the course of your training, you develop metabolic flexibility where you've gotten your body to be relatively flexible at turning fat into usable energy. Like that's a big part of the training effect that you get on your long bike ride leading up to a Ironman. And then you're also trying to maximize substrate intake that you're eating live during the race and, race day.
Right. Yeah, when you talk about it being fast and slow, that in the long workout sense, that makes sense to me. But what about high intensity training, high intensity performance, like someone doing powerlifting or Olympic lifting or even HIIT training intervals? Would ketones work there, or you still want to be more fueled by carbs?
It's less clear that ketones will work there directly. That the shorter, burstier stuff is going to be more glycolytic, because glucose, which is stored as glycogen, just keep using these terms interchangeably. Like glucose and glycogen are essentially the same. Glycogen is just stored glucose. You're going to be glycolytic. If you go run at 800 meters right now, 2 laps around the track, that's glycolytic. If you do a Murph, it's going to be an hour. That's going to be like on the cusp of, you're probably still going to be glycolytic. Once you start talking about like a 2, 3, 4 hour
I was
bike,
not. It took me 2 hours.
Did you do one?
And
on
by the end,
Day?
I went from 101 glucose down to 65, and I was like, "Oh, I'm definitely in ketosis at this point."
Yeah.
Also,
yeah.
it took I took my time for other reasons. I was shooting a video, but anyway.
Yeah. Well,
for me, I feel like Murph was long enough that I burned through and I could have benefited from this. Anyway.
Well, no, there you go. It's like, if people are familiar to like zones of training, right? You have like zone 1 through, what is it? Like 5 or 6 at the top end. The lower zones are going to be able to use more of a balance of fat and ketone system. They're still going to use some carbs if there's carbs available. The higher end, high intensity zones are going to be very glycolytic. And there's a spectrum in between where basically if you're doing a marathon, you're doing an Ironman, you're going to be using a lot of glucose, but you're going to be bending towards also using a lot of fat and ketones.
Yeah.
And so on the shorter stuff, it's like some people say like we work a lot with weightlifting. Like we work with USA weightlifting, the Olympic team. My sense is that it works there for more cognitive reasons, that when you drink a ketone, the ketones are providing fuel to your brain. They cross the blood-brain barrier. They have this subjective effect, and cognitively you feel more switched on, and you got more hoo-ah, right? You got more like, but it's not. Yeah, as a technical term. But you don't. It's not. And I don't think it's necessarily doing something for your muscles per se. I think it's just like switching you on mentally. But hey, it's all connected, right? If you have more willpower, more energy to throw, more willpower to throw at it, then that can be real. Recovery works for both. Like recovery for sprinty stuff or longer stuff, where if your muscles are ripped up, there's some interesting studies on ketones helping to increase muscle protein resynthesis and muscle glycogen reuptake. So regardless of what the exercise was, even if it was weightlifting or like something like kind of more spiky, sprinty or endurance, that afterwards, when you're taking your gold standard nutrition, your protein, carb, drink, whatever that is for recovery, that if you have ketones with it, it basically accelerates the rate of that stuff working.
Whoa, that's crazy.
Yeah. Ketones seem to have some effect beyond just that they're calories. Like they already have a signaling effect where they basically say, hey, like there's ketones here. We can provide you with energy. Let everything else like get packed away. Like we don't need to burn it right away. Like pack that away, which is what you want when you're doing, when you're in recovery mode.
Yeah. Interesting. Cause I always thought of like, if I had ketones in my blood, my body is actually stressed out, right? It's going into survive mode. But this sounds like it almost makes your body calm down. Like, okay, we're fine.
It's interesting, right? Because normally your body has ketones present when you're fasting or starving.
Right.
So one model to think about it is that you're basically signaling to your body when you drink a ketone to go into super efficient mode. It's like you're putting your phone into like low battery mode. It's going to like use that last 10% of juice really well. It's going to cause your body to be really efficient. It's going to activate. So this is why it's really interesting for recovery. It activates parasympathetic rest and recovery response. And I think that's part of why it helps the muscle glycogen reuptake, muscle protein synthesis. Is basically telling your body like that you're in efficient mode, like keep the calories, like pack them on really efficiently. Yeah, it had some signaling effects beyond just like, hey, this is another source of calories. Like once there's ketones present, your body's like, oh, interesting. Ketones present. Like I think your body thinks that you haven't eaten in a little while. And that's why you're starting to make ketones.
That's fascinating. It's like cheating. I work so hard fasting, and then everybody can just waltz in here, not go through the flu or whatever. Ooh, should we talk about that? Is there like, okay, when you start getting your body into burning fat and getting into ketosis, because you said, oh, like a blanket statement, your body can burn fat or your body can make ketones. But isn't the average American like not really able to? You kind of have to train your body to do it.
That's a very good point. It's inside of all of our genetic codes to be able to make ketones from fat. However, you're absolutely right. If you've been on standard American diet for 30 years and
almond joys and Slurpees, breakfast of champions, then you've atrophied that ability, and you can get it back though, is the thing, that your body has the ability to make those enzymes. It just has not been. And that's where people have the keto flu, where if you've had chronic high glucose for your entire adolescent and adult life, it's going to hurt the first time you try to fast, especially if you're not used to any kind of endurance sports or anything that's like
bringing your tank down to empty, like the first time you bring your tank down to empty and your body's like, oh boy, like I got to make ketones now. You don't have the enzyme availability to do that. That's what we mean when we talk about metabolic flexibility or getting into ketosis. Is there, your body needs to get better at making those ketones, but it's like a muscle. Like you can by practicing it and spending more time in that state. The other half of the equation is, for the listeners, you just got a nice bicep flex. For
One
the
of
other
many in every episode.
Yeah. The other part of the equation is like the ability to metabolize ketones. So if you have ketones circulating, your body can get better at metabolizing those. There's a set of enzymes that bring it into the mitochondria, that cross different barriers, that bring it through the Krebs cycle. You upregulate the production of those the more that you have ketones present. So it's interesting, right? Like one thing that we see that's maybe counterintuitive is that with ketones is that with Ketoneiq is that when you have a really metabolically flexible person drink ketones, their ketones will go up and then they will go down sooner because their body is really good at metabolizing them, versus someone who is less metabolically flexible. When they drink a ketone, the ketone is going to hang around longer because they have less ability to metabolize it. So it's like it's working better if it like goes up and then down more quickly. So yeah, that's a good nuance, like that. It's not just everyone's equally able.
Yeah, and I didn't know there were like kind of two aspects of it, right? Not just making them, but then also using them, or like two things that you can work out and get better at.
Yes,
that's cool. And yeah, because you're talking about like circulating blood ketones. You know, I test mine because again, I'm that crazy person in your demographic. Have you like what's the difference between that or the pee strips that I believe Max has?
I have. I'm not going right now, but yeah.
We'll wait. The best way to measure your ketone levels is through blood. There's other ways to do it that are approximations. There's urine tests, there's breath tests, but the thing that you're directly trying to ascertain is your blood ketone level. Urine, there's some correlation, but it's really complicated because if your body's peeing it out, it might be less good at metabolizing it. Like your levels might be higher than what your pee is indicating. One thing that when people get really metabolically fit is their blood ketone or their urine ketone levels will be very low because their body's not expelling any ketones anymore because their body's really good at using them. Breath is a similar thing. Like you're not like your breath it's measuring a offshoot of blood ketones, like that there's acetone. There's like as your ketones are getting metabolized, they're hopping through a few different states. And one of those states is a byproduct. And that byproduct is called acetone. And you breathe that out. And so the breath tests will measure your breath acetone. But again, it's like a second order. It's an order off of the first order thing that you would care about, which is blood ketone. So the best way to do it right now is with a Keto Mojo or a Abbott. Like where you do the pinprick and you see, hey, I'm at 1.6 millimole per liter of ketones. And then I saw you had
a lot for me.
That'd be high, but it's not a lot if you have a couple shots of Ketoneiq. You'll be there in 15 minutes.
I need to test. Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
definitely doing
that's
this.
The thing is like it's hard if you're doing a ketogenic diet, or like I did a 7-day fast once and it took a couple
days. Did you die?
I did not die. Pleased to report.
Interesting.
Prove it.
Clarification. Yeah, prove it. But it took, a couple of days before your body ramps up to that level of like, 2 millimole per liter of ketones. Wow. And then it keeps going up to like 3, 4, and then it plateaus.
Did you feel hoo-ah?
Yeah. Well, I think I felt. I mean, you know how fast you've done some fasting, right? Like you know how it feels when you're kind of
72 is my record. You crushed me.
It's
72 hours, not days.
Yeah, that's what it's. So 3 days is real. I think 3 days. It kind of the feeling kind of stays the same. I think the first couple of days can be harder, and then once your body gets in the mode, it kind of stays the same. It's interesting when is it hoo-ah? It's like this flow state. It's like you're in I would compare it more to like this runner's high. You feel anxiolytic, like you feel more dialed in. I wouldn't describe it as like I'm ready to punch through a wall like the Kool-Aid man. Like doesn't feel like you just had 3 cups of coffee. Like 3 cups of coffee is 3 cups of coffee. Like that's like a clear stimulant upper. Ketones, my personal experience with it is it's more of a flowy state, more of an energetic, like, but even feeling to it.
So maybe just
I know exactly what you're talking about. Explain it to Max, because he still gives me crap about this is why I fast, because of that, whatever he's describing. He's rolling his eyes.
Allie fasts because she wants to tell me about how much she's fasting. That's literally the only reason I can ever imagine.
Hey Max, I skipped breakfast.
That's great. Fantastic. I slept through breakfast, so I guess we're on the same page.
Same thing. That's one reason to do it.
Well, but for example, I think what Allie's saying is like, I love a good fat sandwich, but I also have to take a nap immediately after that fat sandwich, So I think that's probably what I would imagine you're describing.
Yeah. Yeah. A big fat sandwich, it spikes your blood glucose, and then your pancreas is going to release a lot of insulin to address that blood glucose. And then as that blood glucose starts to go away, it starts to get packed away or burnt off, that ambiently high level of insulin. But then when the glucose is low, that ambient high level of insulin is going to send a signal to your brain that you're hungry again or sleepy. And that's really what you want to avoid on a weekday. That's why I think cereal is a conspiracy theory. I don't think that anyone should be having like a bowl of Frosted Flakes for breakfast.
Balanced breakfast. What do you mean?
Exactly. Like I think if you have a bowl of cornflakes and orange juice, like you're not going to have a good day.
That picture in the commercial where there was like a glass of milk, orange juice, cereal, I don't know, like an apple or something, and then some other
cantaloupe, a loaded handgun. You know what I mean? Just like, how much is this? How many more things are going to appear on that table?
Yeah, no, but there's this. It's like it's not crazy, but that the Kellogg family, the Kellogg guy who created cereal, he knowingly did this. That it was to stop sexual libido. It was to sedate the population by let's feed them low cost carbs that have everyone like in line and complying.
I feel
you can Google it.
Go on.
It's like, okay, like sugar, like the amount of carbs that were.
This Matrix sounds way less cool than the Matrix I'm familiar with.
But the thing is, like, we're here talking about
blue pill is this shot though.
Yeah. That we're here talking about, okay, exogenous ketone. It's really interesting to be able to drink a ketone. Like exogenous sugar is novel also. Like that didn't always exist. That's only existed for a couple hundred years, and like processed cereals and stuff. It's like the last 100 years. So it's like, yeah, like right now we think it's really novel and neat to have an exogenous ketone. But like for most of human evolutionary history, it was hard to get straight exogenous sugar. It doesn't exist in nature. It exists in nature in the form of like honey, which if you don't have domesticated bees, it's like you're climbing up there's like some parts of the world you're able to climb up some super tall ass tree and get stung by a bunch of bees, and then maybe you can get some honey. Like that was the extent to which there was raw sugar in the world. And then sugar just took off, right? I mean, it's also connected with a lot of colonialism and slave trade, and like basically the whole world got addicted to sugar in the last few hundred years. It was not always that way, and we
But
just
also it tastes delicious versus making a face, possibly.
There is that. Sugar does taste good, so it's very addicting. It's very evolutionary advantageous for the fruits and plants and all that have sugar content, because they make humans want to agriculture them.
Right. Interesting. So
why,
okay, we're
why
talking about,
hasn't it been? Why were you the first guys to make drinkable?
because Kellogg.
Big Kellogg.
big Kellogg, big food. It was a engineering problem, frankly, to get it to a spot where it was low cost and to get out there.
$20K.
Yeah, it was super expensive. It took some amount of activation energy. It's like the way things are going with electric cars, right? It's like it takes some like force of nature and capital behind to say, okay, like there's just some basic R&D work, some activation energy required to get it going. And it's like there was a lot of incrementality towards building towards it, but we were at an interesting spot where we had a successful nootropics business. My co-founder and I got on the Shark Tank. Like we were like, business was going really well. And we're like, okay, what's next? We didn't do a deal with the sharks, by the way, but it was still awesome. We can talk about that. It was pretty off the
Better
script.
than that.
Yeah. We didn't need them. Sorry, Mark. We were doing all right without you. Bye. We had our nootropics business was doing really well. And we were just like, what's next? And we had some capital behind and really good investors, and just the business was working. And then we saw everyone was doing bulletproof coffee, putting MCTs and coconut oil and grass-fed butter into their coffee, doing all these, jumping through all these hoops in order to get their body to make ketones. And we just asked the dumb, smart question of like, why can't I go to the store and buy a ketone then? And then pulling on that thread is what led to everything from there. So,
well, but let's for a second. Isn't some of the benefit getting your body into the mode of making its own, producing its own?
Yes.
I mean, how does that? Do you find that once you give people ketones, then they sort of naturally sort of get into that state, or then afterwards they're all just like wonky afterwards?
You do want your body to be making its own ketones. This is not like a cheat code where you can just go eat like donuts and Skittles and almond joys and
almond joys. Yeah, I was gonna say.
When's the last time you had an almond joy? I don't know why I said that. I haven't had an almond joy like in 15 years.
I think Halloween when I was 9, and I was like, oh, these are, okay. Well, good to know.
Well, shout out almond joys.
Yes.
we have a
how much do I wish Kellogg's makes almond joys right now?
Yeah, you want your body to be making its own ketones. Ketoneiq is not a cheat code. It's not a way around that. You do want to be eating less sugar. You do want to be moving around every day. You do want to be spending some time in like where you're just not eating, some intermittent fasting, eating window. Man. At least spending some time where you're not eating sugar in the day. Like you do not want to be constantly barraging your blood.
He sets a 3 a.m. alarm to eat an almond joy.
Yeah. One little tip that they don't want you to know for one tip that every successful person has in common. They wake up at 3 a.m. and they slam
this one tip joy. Will change your life.
Yeah. So you want to still do those things. Drinking a ketone is not a replacement for all those other things. You can't just have a donut and then drink a ketone. It's part of a lifestyle though. Is that like, if you are doing intermittent fasting or you are doing a low carb diet, it's nice to be able to have another tool in your toolkit. Because a lot of times what people do is they'll try to do low carb on weekdays, for instance, and then on weekends, they'll be a little bit more loose. And then Monday morning comes around and like, you got to ramp back in to ketosis, it can be helpful to have something to sip on. It can be helpful, in the afternoon if you want to pick me up, to have something that is just a straight ketone as opposed to, because it gives you energy, and you don't want to be having. A lot of people don't want to have too much caffeine in the afternoons, right? Like I think at least all of us are we all wearing some Oura ring or Whoop or something at this point?
Being told what to do.
No, I'm my own.
Is that a
man.
Garmin on your wrist too?
Yes, I'm double.
Yeah, but he runs thousands of miles a day.
Yeah. That basically all these smart devices, and we're able to track our sleep score through our Auras or our Whoops or our 8 sleep mattresses or whatnot, Apple Watches, that like people don't want to have caffeine in the afternoons. It can be helpful to have a non-caffeinated, no sugar energy pick me up. So I want to be clear. It's not, Ketoneiq is not panacea. It's like if it's 5 or 10% of your calories in a day, and it's a tool in your toolkit with all these other good behavior things, that's where you see the benefits.
Yeah. Well, I feel like I could go longer than 72 hours if I was sipping on this. Although, whatever. It's I guess a matter of opinion too. But would you consider yourself fasted even though you're taking exogenous ketones?
Right. Yeah. It's a question ketones have calories in it. So in the strict sense, you're breaking your fast because you're having something caloric. Okay. However,
your body's still getting fooled into that fasting.
It depends on what your goal is with fasting, right? Because if your goal with fasting is to be at like steep of a calorie deficit as possible, turn on autophagy, all those things that happen when you have like a strict calorie deficit, then you don't want to eat any calories.
So this will stop autophagy if you have that during a fast. Is that what you think?
It will slow it down because it's providing you with calories that you can use.
Okay.
If your other goals of why people want to do fasting is they want to give their blood insulin system a break. They want to get into ketosis. Okay. For that set of benefits, drinking a ketone can help you out. So it depends what your goals are. I would say if you're going to cheat with one thing, don't want to cheat with Almond Joy. That's going to completely work against your goals. Do not want to have anything with sugar in it. Sure. If you're going to cheat with anything, it's like, okay, coffee or like Ketoneiq, like something that is the coffee is still acaloric. So you're good there. But that like a lot of people will use it in the morning when they wake up, if they're trying to do a 16 or 18 hour fast, Sure. They'll have a little bit of ketones to like bridge them through to lunchtime.
Yeah. You were talking about MCT oil is big in the industry, and it felt like Dave Asprey was trying to get to here with his Brain Octane oil, right? He was like, it's more ketones in my oil. It's somehow more refined or whatever. It's like, I don't know. Yeah. How does this compare to MCT oil and Brain Octane?
Yeah, I think massive shout out to Dave Asprey and everything they've done, and Bulletproof has become just a household name. It's awesome. I think they're the coolest thing in the last decade that everyone in and around biohacking or performance or productivity has at least tried Bulletproof at some point. And the whole goal there, yeah, you're right, with Brain Octane is there's different forms of MCTs there's different forms of fat in general, MCT being the most efficient at turning into ketones. And then you can even look within MCTs, like there's specific kinds of MCTs that will turn most efficiently into ketones. There's still a conversion process, and it's still like 10% compared to just drinking Ketoneiq. So you're right. It's like, that's what I say to people when they're looking for a point of reference or how does this compare, is like the same thing that you're going for with Bulletproof coffee. This is that, but just like way, way quicker and more. You can stack them together too. Like you can have Bulletproof coffee, and then it's like you'll get the slow burn of ketones from that. And you can have like the quick ketones from Ketoneiq.
I feel like I could just do an Ironman without training if I did that. It's too dangerous.
Try it.
Next episode.
I had this question. How can I eat as many carbs as possible but still get keto benefits? I guess we already touched on this, that it's not a panacea.
Yeah. I mean, if you're eating a lot of carbs and a lot of ketones, you're just gonna be having a lot of energy at the same time.
Right.
The whole idea of Ketoneiq would be that it's like helping to stop you from eating so much carbs.
So if you had that sandwich that Max was talking about and you're spiking high and then you had ketones, you would actually stay spiked longer?
You're not you
or your insulin.
Would you stay spiked longer? No, like it's like in your calories in, calories out equation, you just had a lot of calories. So the ketones are probably going to make your body like pack that some amount of those calories away quicker, like what we were saying earlier with the glycogen reuptake. Like if you have a sandwich and you have ketones, your body's going to prioritize those ketones and those carbs are going to get packed away. Unless you're like doing an Ironman right now, unless you're like jogging and then you're in that context where, okay, I want maximum substrate availability. But unless you're like doing something right now with all that energy, you're just kind of eating a lot. You're just having a lot of calories all stacked.
Yeah. Oh, I'd seen suggestion of having it before meals. So
it can be interesting before a meal because it can suppress appetite. It can control appetite. There was this really interesting study done where the researchers, they had two participant groups. They fed them the same amount of calories, but group A was having ketones and group B had dextrose, sugar. So it is isocaloric, same amount of calories. And so you have 100 calories from ketones versus 100 calories from dextrose. And what they showed is that in the ketone group, people felt much more satiated after 60, 90, 120 minutes. They felt more satiated when asked on a scale of 1 to 10, how hungry are you? And then when they did the objective blood measure, the finger pricks and blood measure of ghrelin, the hunger hormone, and they showed that ketones significantly suppress ghrelin compared to dextrose. So this is where not all calories are the same, where if you're having sugar, it's addictive. You're going to get hungry again really quickly. But if you have ketones, then you're going to not be as hungry. So that's part of why people like having it before a meal, is that it's satiating, and it's also going to help your blood glucose to not spike as much during the meal.
Yeah. Okay. And what about before sleep? I know some people struggle with like going hypoglycemic while they're sleeping. Do you suggest sometimes having it before bed?
Yeah. Some people like it before bed because you use a lot of energy when you're sleeping. Your brain, body, you're turning on your parasympathetic nervous system, which is rest and recovery, as opposed to your sympathetic nervous system, which is fight or flight. Parasympathetic nervous system still takes energy. There's still a lot of cleanup and different activities that take place when you're getting ready for sleep and going to sleep. And ketones seem to increase that when you take it at night. It's kind of interesting to think about, like, okay, how is the same thing giving you energy, but then it's also helping you sleep? It sounds counterintuitive. One analogy to think about it is like hydration, where if it's 11 a.m. and you have some water, if you're thirsty, you have some water, you're going to be more energetic. If it's 11 p.m. and you're thirsty, you're going to have a hard time going to sleep. If you have some water, you're going to be able to go to sleep. That with ketones being the substrate, like they're not this like targeted drug like caffeine or what, all the other different things that people put in their body that are like specifically a stimulant or a upper or a downer. Like ketones are a substrate. There's primitive that whatever your body's trying to do based on where your circadian rhythm is at, ketones are going to be an efficient form of fuel to help you go and do that. So if you have it before dinner or before bedtime, they're going to help your body to do those like sleep related things, those rest and recovery related things, like all that muscle glycogen resynthesis, muscle protein reuptake, that all takes some energy. All the activity going on in your brain where you're cleaning up toxic buildup from throughout the day, it all takes some amount of energy. So having a efficient substrate available to do that can help. I wouldn't have like a super dose. I wouldn't have like 3 shots of ketones before going to bed, but a little bit of it does seem to help. And it's been part of the protocol for what like the pro cyclists do, is they'll have it, throughout the day, including before bedtime.
Interesting.
Can you hit us with some fun pro athlete or elite performer stories from your inside research?
Yeah, well, we do a lot of work with the DoD Special Operations Command. Those guys are super badass. We do a lot of work in hypoxia. So it's a lot of low oxygen. So simulating on top of mountains or jet fighter or underwater, like any of these situations where you could be low oxygen. So we've met some badass people there. We've been to some bases that don't exist, and seen some cool stuff, basically like cutting edge of warfighter performance there. On the athletic front, we did this really cool. Okay, there's this in pro cycling, there's this competition called the Hour, which is you get on a bike in a velodrome, like a bike track, and you bike as far as you possibly can in an hour, and it's hell. Like it's like super painful.
This is that angled track. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. It's angled track, and you're usually on a fixed gear bike because you don't need to change gears. You're just going at constant speed. Just you have it geared to exactly the optimal gear for hitting a really nice steady pace the whole time. And you don't want to have other gears because those are just added weight. You just have your one gear and you just go. It's called the Hour. And this existed before the Tour de France. This used to be like the thing of how do you decide who's the best cyclist in the world. This is called the Hour. And it's cool because every like few years, someone will take a crack at it and see if they can break the record. Anyway, we helped the woman world record holder breaker. Her name is Vittoria Bussi. She's an Italian cyclist, and we worked with her and gave her some ketones. I mean, she did all this other amazing like years of preparation and training, and had the airtight speed suit by this group called Endura. They make the best like airtight speed suits, and she had all this other stuff dialed in. She also had ketones, and she broke the world record. It was really cool.
Oh.
And I mean, there's some other interesting factoids inside of there where when you're doing the Hour, there's always this sweet spot where like you actually don't want to be at sea level because the air is thicker at sea level.
The air that you're riding through, you mean?
Yeah. The air that you're riding through is thicker.
Oh my God.
It's like,
it's so thick.
It's
today.
so thick down here. It's just more thick. It's more like in space. It's very thin. It's very thick here. So it causes more drag. Versus at altitude, the air is very thin. You can slice through it. But at altitude, there is less oxygen,
right,
which is detrimental. But there's this sweet spot at a few thousand feet of altitude where the air is like thinner, but the performance drop off hasn't happened yet. And it's also interesting with ketones, right? Because like ketones have this effect. So much of the work that we do with the Special Operations Command is in hypoxia, where especially in these low oxygen environments, ketones seem to be like super fuel because they require less oxygen to metabolize.
Right.
So if you're at a few thousand feet, this is even before ketones, but it's interesting how ketones play into the story there, that there's that sweet spot of at a few thousand feet. And what's cool is there's only a few velodromes in the world that are at that like sweet spot. There's one in like Denver, and there's one in like Aguas Calientes, Mexico, which is where Vittoria did it. There's like, I don't think there is one in Europe, or like there might be one. Like there's only a handful of tracks that are at that sweet spot level of elevation. And that's where everyone always goes to try and crack at the world record.
That's so crazy. Oh man. It also makes me feel so stupid sitting in my laptop being like, me and my ketones and my like energy source that I need.
Yeah. Well, the air is pretty thick down here, so it's not easy.
Yeah. The real tough fixie ride to my studio. I had no idea that's why they exist. I ride one and didn't even realize it's because I needed to be lighter to get through LA.
Yeah. You ride a fixed gear bike?
Yeah, I just nice. One gear, all same speed.
I love it. And it's like full fixed, right? Like does it have brakes, or do you brake by backpedaling?
I have handbrakes because I don't trust my legs in traffic. Don't, Max, get out. But yes, I can brake with my feet.
We've both seen the movie Premium Rush, and so for years I've been telling Allie about fixed gear, no brakes. You just got to keep going. But Allie's, she's not quite there.
I rode a fixed I rode a fixed gear for many years in college and afterwards, and I had a front brake, but my back brake, the old legs.
Solid.
Did you have a giant chain around your waist that you could whack taxi cabs with?
Yeah, there's the hand-to-hand
that's
combat.
amazing.
I stopped. I stopped because I moved to San Francisco and it's very hilly. I needed some gears. Gears are nice.
Yeah,
but my
that's a
college
lot.
campus was very flat, and I could just cruise around, and it was nice having very low maintenance. Very I knew how to repair everything about my bike. It's very simple.
Oh, I still take mine in. Can you track stand? That was the point of getting one, and I still can't. You can?
Yeah, I can. I can track stand.
It's cool.
Yeah, you just get a nice little rock going. Yeah.
Since we're talking about method of transportation, and we opened this with you saying ketones are the most efficient form of fuel, when can we see you guys coming out with the Ketoneiq car? I want a car fueled by ketones. Let's go. Get on it.
That would be cool. I would say combustion engines have a totally different mechanism of action than your mitochondria. And that I likewise would not advise you drinking diesel fuel. Also, the prices these days, but I would not advise drinking gasoline for your metabolism. But no, it's cool. I think
metabolic flexibility.
Metabolic flexibility. Like what do you mean you can't? It's the premium grade. You can't digest the stuff.
Well, you get the flu at first, but
yeah,
you get used to it.
Yeah, but we are off the record talking with some not to be named F1 drivers and whatnot for the cognitive aspect of the racing, that because they don't want to have caffeine they stay away from caffeine when they're racing because it's too much of a stimulant. They actually want to keep their heart rate low. They want to be calm, cool, and collected, but having something to keep them energized and dialed in is really interesting.
Interesting.
It's cool.
Yeah, I just realized a car fueled by ketones would be Max and three other of his bro buddies drinking Ketoneiq and then carrying me.
like a chariot, like a
Flintstones car.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Well, awesome. I can't wait to go test my ketones. See how this is working for me. I hope they're really low because I use them all up.
Yes, that would be a good sign that you're metabolically fit.
Yeah. I will.
Well, thank you so much.
I don't remember the last time I've been in ketosis. I don't know if I've ever been in ketosis.
I can't believe you said it correctly.
The keto.
If you wake up and go do some exercise, you are probably starting to make some ketones without eating.
Without eating.
Yeah, then I'd be curious. You're probably making some nominal amount of ketones at least.
Max, go pee.
Okay.
Okay, we do have a discount for the fit heads if you want to try out Ketoneiq. Show us your ketone face on Instagram. We'll put a link in the description, and we'll give you a code to get a discount on this if you want to try it out. Cool. And thank you so much, Michael. This has been great chatting with you.
Thank you. Yeah, this is one of the funnest ones ever. Gotta say.
Quite enlightening. Oh, you got some boring podcasts? Imagine that.
I don't know. Believe it or not, ketone science can get dry. But we kept it fun today.
Amazing.
Awesome. And thank you so much to the fit heads. If you can rate and review on Apple Podcasts, that helps us out a whole lot. And we will see you next week.